Greetings, colleagues and friends. We are delighted that we have the launch of the fourth issue of the International Journal of Cooperative Law, specialized on taxation and cooperatives, which is an issue that is hardly being tackled despite its significance. And let me just serve. And for those of you that are not aware of IUS Cooperativum, I hope you can see my screen. IUS Cooperativum is, which is the organizer of the webinar today, is an international association of cooperative lawyers that enhances research between different regions and legal traditions in the field of cooperative law. And some of our activities or some of our inspiration is, if you like, International Journal of Cooperative Law. Some of the content of today's webinar is the fourth issue, and this is the reason why we launch this webinar. The International Journal of Cooperative Law has an explicit focus on the field of cooperative law. It's published annually, it's in English. And apart from that, there are also other activities that we strive to tackle and we strive to engage in, such as the international forums on cooperative laws, and the world map of cooperative lawyers. In particular, with the fourth issue of the Journal of the International Journal of Cooperative Law, this issue that took us a while actually has a special section, and it's mostly devoted on cooperatives and contemporary issues in tax law and policy. And we had the pleasure of having a guest editor, Pilar Aguilar Marin. Also, we have manuscripts on the latest developments on legislation. I report on events, as well as Ian Snaith's interview, with whom we shall highlight some key points, and hope that you all enjoy today's discussion. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I suppose it's my time to introduce the issue.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, everybody knows that this issue is has a special topic in taxation of cooperatives. We think is an important topic in especially the question of why the cooperatives have or should have a special tax treatment. That would be, the question to answer by the authors of the papers of the issue. Well, the issue is a very complete one. Has the twofold aim. In one part has been we have made a panoramic of all the tax treatments in the world, and the other hand, we have opened the gate to the authors to publish papers in specific matters on taxation of cooperatives. So we have 15 articles, 15 papers in this special issue. The first one is a complex one because it's written by María Amparo Grau Ruiz, a Spanish author that later will expose the contents. But it's written by Amparo, but on the basis of the works of a number of authors all over the world who have exposed the tax treatment in their countries of cooperatives under a similar schedule with some questions, the same for everyone. And well, we have this panoramic, this comparative tax law in cooperatives. I think is a very interesting contribution to the knowledge of the subject. And then, as Amparo will expose the contents with more detail, I go to introduce the other articles, the other papers. We have a specific subject. The first one would be the Juanjo Hinojosa Torralbo, that as he's going to expose the paper later, I only will say that is European. The title is European Taxation of Cooperatives, an examination of the possibilities offered by the new concept of limited profitability, and is a very interesting apportation to the construction of the European law in social cooperatives. After that, we have Nina Aguiar study on the cooperatives income, the taxation of cooperatives income. Analysis of is rational. Nina has contributed also to the legal aspects of taxation of cooperatives in Portugal to the earlier paper. And then in Spain, we have Marina Aguilar Rubio exposing about models for direct taxation of cooperatives under cooperative law. This is a very interesting topic because modelize, the tax treatment in corporation tax in the world. So it's a very methodological issue. It's a very I think it's a very interesting one. Then we have the contribution of Sofia Arana Landin. Sofia has been a lot of time in the States, in the United States, and knows very well the tax regulation of the worker cooperatives there. And we are lucky to have her work on the tax treatment of USA workers cooperatives. After that, we have some Latin American authors, and we have Daniel Francisco Nagao Meneses and Manuel García Jiménez that have spoken about the tax treatment of the Cooperative Act. So we have the models of taxation, we have in corporation tax, but then the specific issue of the Cooperative Act, especially in Latin American countries. So we have a panoramic of the treatment of the Cooperative Act in all Latin American countries, which I think is very, very interesting also. And then we have some more specific topics like the monotributo. The monotributo is a tax, a specific tax in Argentina. And Miguel Agustín Torres has spoken to us about the treatment of the monotributo the impact in cooperatives in Argentina. Following with Latin America, Professor Orestes and Oricel and Liana Simón Otero have made an article about the taxation of cooperatives in Cuba. That they make a proposal of a regulation to the all the whole cooperatives in Cuba, because as I suppose, as you know, in Cuba they have two treatments very different: the agricultural cooperative on one side and the others, the workers cooperative on the other. Well, they make a proposal after reading the cooperative law to make a uniform tax treatment for all the cooperatives in Cuba. It's a very interesting topic. In Greece, we have Michael Fefes and Marieta Charitonidou, I suppose I expect to pronounce well, and they speak about Greek agricultural cooperatives. Also in Greece, agricultural cooperatives have a special tax treatment for them. It's a very common subject. The agricultural cooperatives having some specialties of their own, no? More than other cooperatives. And then in Italy, we have Maria Grazia Ortoleva speaking us about the tax treatment of social cooperatives, and a specific kind of cooperatives that, as I suppose you know, the social cooperatives in Italy are, how they say, the first ones in have a specific regulation and a specific tax treatment. So it's a very interesting issue. And then following with Europe, we have made Greece and then Italy, and we go to Belgium. Sabine Garois speak to us about the the cooperatives, tax treatment of cooperatives in Belgium, and she is speaking about the tax law and the relation with the non-tax law, no? About the relationship with the regular law or regulative law. And the last paper in European countries is the one by Valesca Sigüenza. This article speaks about the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation, and as you know, it's an exemplar in all the world, and well, the tax treatment in País Vasco in Spain. We have also two papers from Asia. We have Santosh Kumar speaking us about the jurisprudence, the court ruling in India about the tax treatment of cooperatives, and also we have a paper from Korea. Kim Jong-jin is complaining about the lack of a specific tax treatment in cooperatives in this country. Only one article, only one paper speaks about the situation in Africa. Is the one made by Ajibola Anthony Akanji about the taxation of cooperative societies and sustainable development. As we are now with the ODS, is a topic with future, the relationship between cooperatives and taxation of cooperatives and ODS. Yeah. So in order to conclude my intervention, that I want to be brief, I think the major conclusion would be that there is a close link, a very strong relationship between the tax treatment of cooperatives and their identity. More or less, we have right to the conclusion that if tax treatment is more specific in the countries where the legal regime is more specific too. So the legal tax regime is usually linked to the specialities of their legal regime. So I think it's a very good issue. I am very proud of having coordinated it. I think the team has made a very good job. I want to thank all of the authors because they have been heavily pressed by me in order to make the dates and everything. And they have made a wonderful work. And I have to thank you to Andrea, who is here, Andrea Rey, has made all the dirty work in order to take the issue in time and to speak with the authors and everything and have everything in order. So, well, I think I say everything I have to say. If you have any question, of course, I am here for you. Thank you. Gracia Ortoleva has sent a video with the presentation because she couldn't be here. So I will try to.
Thank you, Pilar, for your presentation. And we can only highlight that the collaboration was very fruitful, and we are also grateful to all our authors, to Andrea for her help, also to you, and to our proofreaders and to our peer reviewers, because without them the issue would not be a reality. So
Thank you.
feel free to share your in order for us to listen to the next contribution by Miss Ortoleva, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think ¿será esta?
Si le pones pantalla, lo tienes abierto.
Devi cliccare Pilar, devi cliccare sul file
Yeah, sì, lo so, ma
e poi condividere lo schermo.
a ver si lo encuentro ahora. A ver.
Estarán descargas porque te las descargas.
Claro. ¿Dónde está la descarga? A ver.
¿Voy?
Sí, por favor. Estoy volviendo loca.
Well, if it needs more time, we can perhaps go to the next presenter and give you, Pilar, some time for you to share, or are you close? Okay, yeah. Okay, the next...
We have it. Yeah,
okay, yeah, okay.
Just a second, because it's open the program, but we have the video download, so only just a second, and we share the screen.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
We can wait. Yes, please do not worry.
No, we have it.
Ajá.
Ahora hay que hacer así.
Vale.
You see the video?
No.
No?
No, espérate.
No, unfortunately, not yet.
Okay, one moment.
A ver.
Pero sí que estamos... vale,
Ah,
ya,
no,
ya lo tengo claro, ya lo
Vale.
tengo claro.
Hay que ir,
Aquí.
a la aplicación. Aquí. Compartir pantalla. Now, I think.
Ok.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we can see.
Organizers for inviting me to give my presentation. I'm going to talk about the treatment of cooperatives in the Italian tax system. Under Italian law, the cooperative company benefits from particularly advantageous tax rules, specifically considered according to its mutualistic purpose. In order to understand the current taxation system, we have tried to answer the following questions. 1. Does your constitution consider cooperatives? 2. Do cooperatives have a special legal regime? 3. Do cooperatives enjoy a specific tax regime? Regarding the first question, in the Italian legal system, cooperation finds its legitimacy in Article 45 of the Constitution, a provision which recognizes the social function of cooperation of a mutual nature and without the aim of private speculation, and which assign to ordinary law the task of promoting and favoring it. It's important to point out that in the constitutional text, the social function of cooperation is related to the essence of the cooperative model. This is understood as a form of business organization based on a collective, democratic, personal, and not capital-based management and solidarity. The elements of mutuality and the absence of private speculation are the characteristics that cooperation must have. If these features are missing, there is no cooperation. Regarding the second question, the general regulation of cooperative companies, except for the fiscal aspect, is contained in the Civil Code. We are referring to certain specific sector of activity, for example, production and labor. There is special legislation. Regarding the ordinary discipline, the Civil Code configures the cooperative as a company with available capital with a mutualistic purpose. Therefore, essential characteristics of every cooperative company are, on the one hand, the corporate structure and the variability of capital, and on the other, the mutualistic purpose. In the Civil Code, the mutualistic purpose is defined as management of service in favor of members. This connotation is considered by doctrine as the DNA of cooperative companies. Also, the Civil Code introduced the distinction relevant for the recognition of the tax benefit between prevalently mutual cooperatives and other non-prevalently mutual cooperatives. In particular, in order to qualify as prevalently mutual, the cooperative must A. comply requirement of prevalence of mutual exchange, B. indicate in the articles of association or the clauses as per Article 2514 of the Civil Code, which are aimed at compressing the subjective profit. For example, the prohibition to distribute reserve among cooperative members. Regarding the third question, in the Italian legal system, there are various tax regulations specifically conceived for cooperative companies in function of their mutualistic purpose. But there is no single tax regime for these entities. On the contrary, different treatment are provided for the qualification of the cooperative as prevalently mutual or not, and among prevalently mutual cooperatives according to the type of activity carried out. Looking at income taxes, cooperative companies are subject to the corporate income tax, IRES, and in order to determine their taxable income, the ordinary criteria provided for the identification to the income of company with share capital apply, except for express derogation. In view of their social function, special rules are being introduced. In particular, some regimes are general, others are facilitations. The former refer to all cooperatives, the latter refer to prevalently mutual cooperatives. The general rules involve a partial exclusion from taxable income of profit allocated to the legal reserve and the indivisible reserve. B. The de-taxation of part of the profit allocated to specific mutualist purposes. And C. The mitigation of the non-deductibility of income taxes. Regarding the fourth questions, the year's profits are not freely available to the shareholders. All cooperatives must allocate at least 30% of the year's net profit to the legal reserve and 3% of the annual net profit to the mutual funds for the promotion and development of cooperation. The existence of such obligation is taken into account, at least in part, by the tax legislator when it provides the taxation only of 10% of the share profits allocated to minimum compulsory reserve, and when it provides the deductibility of payment to the funds made by cooperative company. As regards the profits that remain, their allocation is left to the decision of the shareholders meeting, which in the case of CMPs must respect the rule of the Civil Code about the compression of subjective profit. Having said this, the profits allocated to indivisible reserve have been totally exempt from taxation for a long time. The exclusion from taxation has been progressively reduced because it was believed that the taxation of reserve constituted favorable treatment such as to alter competition between companies with different legal forms. For example, in the current regime, the minimum portion of profit to be taxed is 65% for consumer cooperatives, mutually purpose of all cooperatives. Specific fiscal provisions are in place with reference to the management surpluses that derive from transaction between the company and the cooperatives. This refers to regime of transfers, that is, the fiscal treatment of the amounts assigned to members for the final allocation of the mutualistic advantage. From the point of view of the cooperative company, transfers represent a cost that is deductible for determining the taxable income, on the condition that these sums are paid within the limit of the surplus of the mutual management. From the point of view of the member, the tax regime for elections depends on A, the manner of allocation, B, the type of mutual exchange implemented by the cooperative, C, the status of the member. Such sums are subject to taxation only if they integrate a case of taxable income. When reversions are allocated to increase to share capital, a tax suspension regime is in place. The reversions do not contribute to forming the taxable income of the members because the taxation only takes place at the moment in which the sums are paid to the members. Finally, a favorable tax treatment is in place with reference to social loan. For cooperative companies, the benefit consists of the regime of deductibility of passive interest. For members, the benefit consists of the taxation of the interest received by means of withholding tax at a rate of 20%. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found my presentation useful and interesting. Thanks.
Okay, many thanks to the presentation. The author, Professor Ortoleva, provided us with the summary of the particularities of taxation on cooperatives, and it's quite interesting the interrelation between the cooperative identity, the constitution, and the organizational cooperative law per se. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the next presenting author, Professor Juan José Torralbo. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name. Professor Torralbo, are you ready for the presentation?
No problem, it's okay, it's okay. Good morning, everybody.
Great, look forward.
And yes, I will make my presentation in Spanish. De modo que todo ha ido muy bien. Torralbo es mi segundo apellido, por tanto también es mío y me va bien, es el de mi madre. Por tanto, es lo mejor que uno puede tener, ¿verdad? Bien, pues buenos días a todos desde Málaga. Enhorabuena por esta iniciativa de reunir a los participantes en el número especial de la revista para exponer algunos de los aspectos que tocamos allí. Bueno, hemos perdido ya algún tiempo y supongo que esto está más o menos tasado. De modo que voy a intentar ser lo más breve posible. Como ha dicho la directora, la profesora Pilar Alguacil, el objeto, el tema de mi participación es el análisis de la viabilidad de este concepto de beneficio limitado o limited profitability en inglés, lucrativité limitée en francés, o lucro limitado, se dice por ejemplo en italiano, o en portugués, lucro limitado, que ofrece una idea de entidades que no están en la misma situación que las sociedades capitalistas, de las que se predica, lógicamente, el lucro o el beneficio por sí mismo. Por tanto, el beneficio limitado hace referencia a una característica especial de unas ciertas entidades que no deberían tener la misma caracterización jurídica que las sociedades capitalistas porque no lo son. ¿Cuál es el problema con el que este concepto, esgrimido por el Consejo Económico y Social Europeo en una opinión del dictamen del 2019, de junio, se encuentra en el derecho europeo? Pues fundamentalmente es una situación que viene dada desde hace muchísimo tiempo del Tratado de Roma y que se ha trasladado ahora al Tratado de Funcionamiento de la Unión Europea. Y es el carácter binario de la taxonomía, fijémonos qué escasa es, de empresas en el derecho europeo. El artículo 54, antes 45, es un artículo del Tratado de Funcionamiento de la Unión Europea que regula el derecho de establecimiento. Y lo que dice el artículo 54 en el párrafo primero es que las personas jurídicas, las empresas, personas jurídicas, también tendrán libertad de establecimiento del mismo modo que las personas físicas, porque evidentemente todo el Tratado de Funcionamiento de la Unión Europea en esos preceptos está dirigido a regular el derecho de establecimiento de las personas físicas. Pero bueno, nos encontramos con empresas y se nos dice, ¿qué hacer con las empresas? Pues le damos también derecho de establecimiento. Y el párrafo segundo dice, en principio, da la impresión que a título puramente indicativo, que todas las firmas o todas las compañías que se hayan constituido conforme al derecho civil o al derecho mercantil, incluidas las sociedades cooperativas, que es un punto un poquito sorprendente, y todas las que estén sometidas al derecho público o privado, se consideran empresas a esos efectos, menos las entidades sin ánimo de lucro. Por tanto, tenemos una concepción binaria del modelo de empresa que no tiene ninguna razón desde el punto de vista de la verdadera naturaleza de las empresas, sino de algo tan singular como si la empresa tiene ánimo de lucro absoluto o no tiene ánimo de lucro. Pero nos encontramos con que los ordenamientos jurídicos nacionales diseñan muchos tipos de empresas que no son empresas sin ánimo de lucro exclusivamente, ni tampoco son empresas de corte capitalista absolutamente. Bueno, la situación es, sin embargo, esa. El derecho europeo ha ido funcionando a través de esas dos maneras de entender la empresa, de esa concepción binaria de los modos de empresa en Europa, y en esa concepción binaria ha incluido a las cooperativas dentro del primer grupo. Pero, ¿con qué objeto? Porque evidentemente las cooperativas no son sociedades capitalistas y eso lo dice todo el mundo, en sentido estricto, ¿vale? ¿Por qué están las sociedades cooperativas incluidas en esa primera modalidad del sistema binario de modos de empresa? Pues sencillamente porque no podía negársele el derecho a la libertad de establecimiento de las cooperativas en la Unión Europea. Luego, fijémonos ¿en qué situación estamos? Estamos en una situación en la que para definir o para otorgar el derecho de establecimiento a determinadas empresas, hemos llegado a distinguir dos tipos de empresas que a la postre están teniendo unos efectos muy perniciosos, como por ejemplo está ocurriendo en el ámbito de la fiscalidad. ¿Vale? Algo hemos conseguido arreglar desde el punto de vista de las ayudas de Estado a raíz de la sentencia Pengra-Foss, pero no todo. Evidentemente la Comisión actuó, en el 16 emitió el dictamen sobre las ayudas de Estado, las cooperativas están muy consideradas, pero las entidades de economía social no son solamente las cooperativas, evidentemente hay muchas otras. Por tanto, esto es lo primero que quería decir, que esa concepción binaria o dual de la empresa en el ámbito de la Unión Europea, en el derecho de la Unión Europea, en el derecho desarrollado de la Unión Europea, es algo que debe cuestionarse. Yo creo que puede cuestionarse y que además debe cuestionarse porque no responde a la realidad de lo que son las empresas, ¿vale? Y en todo caso incluye a las cooperativas dentro de las empresas capitalistas, lo cual obviamente es algo que a estas alturas no puede mantenerse, ¿vale? En segundo lugar, una confusión, ¿no? Esto primero es algo que está hecho, está dado por ahora, la jurisprudencia lo admite, sí, pero yo creo que tenemos que avanzar en una crítica a esa concepción binaria porque no es realista, ¿eh? No responde al derecho de la Unión Europea, de los países de la Unión Europea. Obviamente en el trabajo se dan muchos más detalles y se argumenta mucho más, ahora no puedo hacerlo. Bien, en segundo lugar, una confusión que sigue existiendo en la Unión Europea, que tampoco beneficia mucho a las empresas de economía social ni a las cooperativas como empresas de economía social, que es la confusión entre empresas sociales y empresas de economía social, ¿vale? Esa es una confusión que existe y que en realidad es una confusión derivada de ese propio artículo 54.2, ¿vale? Evidentemente, las empresas sociales no tienen ánimo de lucro, actúan en el ámbito económico por criterios de solidaridad, de prestación de servicios sociales, con ánimo de lucro absolutamente inexistente. Fundaciones, asociaciones de carácter benéfico, organizaciones de caridad, ¿vale? Entonces, claro, comparar esto con empresas de economía social, incluidas las cooperativas, que actúan en el mercado, no movidas por el interés de obtener beneficios y repartirlo entre los socios, sino con otras finalidades que ya conocemos, no tiene tampoco mucho sentido. Pues la Unión Europea no ha hecho una distinción clara todavía entre empresas sociales y empresas de economía social. El último documento al respecto es un documento de octubre de la Comisión que se denomina Construir una economía que funcione para las personas, ¿no? Se llama el Plan de Acción para la Economía Social. Y ahí vuelve a introducirse esa confusión, porque evidentemente define lo que es la economía social, le atribuye las características que también todos conocemos y dice que hay 4 tipos, genéricamente, porque claro, identificar las sociedades que hay en la Unión Europea en cada país es muy difícil, que hay 4 tipos, y esos 4 tipos de empresas de economía social son las cooperativas, las mutualidades, las asociaciones, incluidas las organizaciones benéficas y las fundaciones. Estas son las empresas de economía social, lo cual, si eso es una taxonomía, también me vería obligado a incorporar todo el resto de entidades que están en el ámbito de la economía social, pues como bancas, como sociedades laborales, como muchas otras, a incluirlas dentro de esas modalidades, de esos 4 tipos. Pero vamos, lo que me interesa ahora destacar, más que eso, porque esto tendría que ser un análisis más detenido de este documento, es que para la Comisión las empresas sociales forman parte de la economía social. De modo que, claro, es muy difícil distinguir y atribuir regímenes jurídicos diferenciados si se necesitan, si confundimos lo que es una y lo que es otra. Pero parece claro que la Comisión Europea sigue manteniendo, aun con matices, que la economía social en general, es decir, la economía de servicios, la economía de la filantropía, forma parte de la economía social en el sentido de que las empresas o entidades forman parte de las entidades de economía social. Y eso efectivamente luego supone una rémora, ¿vale? Bueno, pues uno de los ámbitos más importantes a los que se dedica este documento es precisamente al ámbito de la fiscalidad. Y dice que es un documento de principios, ¿no? Que va a presentar pues algunas medidas para que la fiscalidad de estas entidades de economía social tenga algunas características más apropiadas. No sabemos cuáles son, porque no las dice, pero es importante porque al menos las menciona. Bueno, en tercer lugar, ¿qué es el beneficio limitado? Bueno, eso es algo que no está dicho en el propio documento. No sabemos qué es el beneficio limitado, evidentemente. No lo sabemos, pero sí sabemos más o menos por dónde tenemos que ir. Y sabemos porque tenemos algunos argumentos. Evidentemente, el Estatuto de la Sociedad Cooperativa Europea pues, puede ser un buen banco de pruebas, y ahí hay criterios que identifican muy bien el modo en que una sociedad no dedica sus beneficios para sí misma, sino para otros fines. Por ejemplo, pues estoy pensando en los fines que se recogen en ese estatuto, en la mejora de las actividades sociales, los fondos propios, las reservas legales, los retornos sociales, las distribuciones de beneficios. Lo que le pide el Consejo Económico Social a la Comisión es que elabore un concepto de beneficio limitado que sea aplicable a todas las empresas que no son exclusivamente capitalistas y que tienen una limitación estatutaria de la aplicación de sus propios beneficios. Bueno, entiende también la Comisión, lo que pasa es que esto es ahora en este nuevo documento, que un régimen fiscal adaptado a las empresas de economía social les permitiría, entre otras cosas, actuar de un modo más limpio en el ámbito de la competencia y también poder acceder de una forma efectiva, por ejemplo, a la obtención de concursos públicos, que es algo a lo que francamente estas compañías, pues, o en lo que estas compañías tienen muchas limitaciones. En fin, cuando uno se enfrenta a documentos de la Unión Europea, tiene que tener siempre la prevención de que los documentos no son normas. En la Unión Europea nunca se sabe qué son normas o qué no son, pero evidentemente también tiene que saber, y eso no ofrece ningún problema, que a veces, pues de modo repentino, lo que se ha estado trabajando durante mucho tiempo, de pronto se convierte en una propuesta de carácter normativo. No sé si esto llegará o no a hacerse efectivo, pero evidentemente la preocupación del Parlamento, del Consejo Económico y Social y también de la Comisión respecto de las empresas de economía social es importante. Hasta ahora están muy metidas en el ámbito de las pequeñas y medianas empresas y más o menos por ahí la cosa se va arreglando. Pero la economía social y en particular el mundo de las cooperativas tiene unas singularidades que son también distintas al de las pequeñas y medianas empresas. Incluso algunas cooperativas, desde luego, no son pequeñas ni medianas empresas. ¿Eso qué significa? Bueno, que tenemos otros argumentos y a mí me parece que el criterio de los beneficios limitados puede ser, si se define bien, un criterio muy eficaz para distinguir a estas entidades de otras. Y cuando las has distinguido, ya eres capaz de dotarlas de un régimen jurídico y también fiscal muy concreto. Creo que es una línea importante de trabajo. Habrá que ver la comisión cómo se sigue esforzando y el empeño que se toma. Bueno, pues esto es lo que tenía que deciros en parte, ¿no? De modo que muchas gracias por oírme y reitero mi enhorabuena a la directora del número especial y mi agradecimiento también a la revista por haberme permitido participar y gracias también a la propia revista y a su dirección.
Thank you, Juanjo.
No,
Many thanks.
Dear Pilar.
Many thanks, Professor Hinojoa Toralvo, for the presentation, also for moving us from Italy to the European perspective, and also for your critical approach or the binary division between for-profit and non-profit when it comes to taxation, and also bringing to the general framework the idea of a social solidarity economy. I would suggest any questions or comments that we have for the presenting authors to leave it at the end. So if there are no objections, we can move then with the next presenting author, Professor Daniel Francisco Nagao Meneses. Daniel, ¿estás aquí?
Here.
Please take the floor.
Yes, good morning, Brazil, Latin America, good afternoon, Peru. It's a pleasure to stay here presenting this paper. First, this is a text made for four hands. I and the Professor Manuel Garcia Jimenez from Córdoba, regional Córdoba in Spain, because we have other Córdoba, Argentina. And this paper is analyze the legal figure, the legal construction for the Cooperative Act based on the Latin American doctrine countries, demonstrating that this act is as the central element of cooperative societies. From the understanding of the meaning of the Cooperative Act, it's possible to think of a model of taxations of cooperative societies, which must be carried out from the Cooperative Act. And the most natural cooperative characteristics is a constant process of extension of their based on actions. For this, a series of strategic alliances between cooperative societies and the markets are necessary, which legally are made by a Cooperative Act. However, the concept of the Cooperative Act, especially in Latin America, comes the 60s years and was not updated, mainly making use of national legal systems, making integration between cooperatives from different countries difficult. With this, the current framework allows cooperatives from the different countries to have economic relationships with each other, but these relationships are not legally considered as cooperative acts. The Cooperative Act is the one performance by the associate with the cooperatives to obtain the services whose provision is organized and for which it was established. So are the acts carried out by the associates of the cooperatives that have an inter-cooperative agreements for the reciprocal use of services, as well as the socioeconomic relationships that cooperatives carry out with each other and or with the integration body. Cooperative acts are regulated by cooperative legislations and the statute of each cooperative, and it's a supplementary manner by the law that regulates the active carry out, and they not involve exchange operations that generate income, which is why they are not subjected to taxation. The practical consequence is need for a specific cooperative society tax legal subsystem in Latin American countries. The legal rules that deal with the Cooperative Act and taxation are diffused with the legal systems of the countries, with not adequate organization level, with negative impacts of the operation of cooperatives in the region. The study tried to review the legal concept of the Cooperative Act and analyze the structure of the Cooperative Act in many countries of the Latin America, pointing out the convergent and divergent points, as well as pointing out the directions for the change in the concept of the Cooperative Act that is come to allow the dual taxations of cooperatives, integration of the business of the Latin American cooperatives. Sorry, it's not COVID. But the cooperatives and in general companies in the solidarity economy may have tax treatment equal for the other taxpayers or preferential treatment, which in turn it may be permanent or transitory. For example, during the Constitution, for a certain number of years or dependent of the type of the company in question. For example, associated labor companies, agricultural companies, and social cooperatives. The ILO, the International Labor Organization, states that governments could consider adopting policies that recognize that, in principle, cooperatives have to be subject to the fiscal contribution in the same way as other commercial enterprise, that the principle of equal treatment should be applied, and that initiatives offered to investment companies and their shareholders should also be made available to cooperatives. But in the case of some types of cooperatives, tax breaks may be justified with a view of stimulating certain activities considered to be in the public interest. Thus, a temporary taxes exception could be convenient so that cooperatives can begin to participate in the national business world in which investment companies and the right president. Dante Carconha, lawyer, points out that really of the different countries shows different attitudes of or policies of the states in tax matters towards cooperatives that are usually related to degree of the development reached of them. In general, when cooperatives are incipient, tax treatment is usually favored, and they grow in importance, that treatment tends to be less and less favored. On the other hand, he observes that the general frameworks of the situation of each country also conditions the tax policy toward cooperatives. Thus, the lower the degree of development of the country, the higher the fiscal support for cooperatives tend to be, since they are considered as contribution factors to economic and social development, and therefore deserving of a special stimulus. In another way, in development countries, the tax treatment of cooperatives tends to differ little or nothing that's granted to commercial companies in general. For this reason, the creation of an advisory body of the authority in charge of reporting on issues related to draft rules and procedures processed before the tax authorities seems appropriate, provide that it's expressly requested by the clients. They assume the interpretation of the tax regulation and propose that most convenient measures for the application of the tax regime. Further the end of this presentation, we observed that the current mode of tax benefits foreseen that by the regulations for cooperative society suffers from important defects from the financial tax perspective, having legitimized this possible beneficial treatments for the constitutional basis of the work of promotion of the social type, derived from the important objectives that can be achieved with them. The expected achievements have not been obtained, among other reasons, due to the important inconveniences that have arisen for the articulate model on the simple form and the legal nature of the cooperative society. The specific tax regimes based on a purely mutualist conception of the cooperative society, excluding any type of openness was considered limit used for the social model, resulting largely in the inefficiency given the demands of the current competitive market, resulting also in current form of the simple mutual perspective, given its limitation to this society and its impossible transfers to other social models with similar ends. And our proposal for this change proposed in the articulation or fiscal stimulation or promotion policy. Said change should lead to configuration of a uniform profit attribution model based exclusively on the achievements of specific objectives and not on the form of the legal nature of the entity to achieve them. There's no doubt that cooperative society development of important social functions, both for their purpose and their way of functions, collaboration effectively in the achievements of certain constitutional objectives, such as full employment, access to decent housing, or improvement of the social cohesion of the territories. Also, for the objectives or proposals to be stimulated have been delimited. The next step will be to carry out a detailed analysis of the most suitable tax measures for a technical, legal, and economical perspectives to achieve the proposed objectives, sanctions in the taxable events, reduction, taxes base, other points. To be inserted the most appropriate taxes to achieve the intended objective without detracting from the legal nature of the tax instrument itself. Finally, it will be essential to monitoring the measures engaged after this application phase to verify their true effectiveness. The only justifying aspect of the indirect expenses generated. And I finish here, and I'd like to make apologize for my poor English, but I expect that you can understand. And many thanks for the opportunities. Greetings from Brazil and Spain.
Daniele, obrigada. Thank you very much for the presentation and for moving from the European perspective to the Latin American perspective, and also shedding some light on a particular institution, the Acto Cooperative, and how it is treated from a tax point of view. Moving forward with our program, it is my pleasure to call to the floor Professor Maria Amparo Grau Ruiz. Professor Grau Ruiz, are you with us?
Yes, I'm trying to.
Hello.
Hello, I don't know if you can.
Hi, Amparo. Hi.
Hello. Happy to see you. I would like to share my screen.
Yes, please.
If I can share it.
Please.
If it works. I don't know if you can see it. No. PowerPoint.
Probably takes a couple of minutes, but let's give it some time.
Okay, well, in that case, I want to thank the organizers and especially Professor Pilar Guacil for her initiative to try to make us think about how to improve the legal regime of cooperatives all around the world. And in my case, I had the pleasure to receive contributions for many different colleagues from quite a number of countries, and this allowed me to make a review of all the possibilities and the problems that in many cases were common in different jurisdictions. So I'm teaching at the Complutense University of Madrid, and I'm leading a research project it's deeply involved in sustainability and how to improve the tax system through smart data management. So I think that if we are taking seriously the Sustainable Development Goals, well, maybe if I put it like this, you will, of course, follow better the presentation. My key messages after reading all the contributions are basically these that I'm going to share now. One is the impact on society, on communities and environment that cooperatives are having nowadays. And we are usually measuring the impact internally regarding the individuals that are undertaking together using this legal institution. But of course, we should be able to measure the external impact of cooperatives on society, because like that, we would be learning that they might deserve double consideration from the perspective of what they provide to the individuals that are joining efforts and how they serve to other constitutionally protected goals. So in many constitutions, you don't find an explicit or implicit protection for cooperatives, but indirectly you find those goals that are also aligned with the Sustainable Development Agenda. Then the problem here is that there is an heterogeneous normative configuration. So in fact, both from the perspective of substantive law and tax law, you cannot find a common pattern when you analyze comparative legislation. And the complexity in this matter also increases due to the different levels of government that many times are involved. So in practice, we've seen that cooperatives are natural, that they appear in many different countries to serve traditional demands. And now we should be able to unlock all their potential if we want to really address sustainable development goals. For that, it's crucial to update the tax regimes that we are applying. And this means that we should be able to play with limits that exist nowadays and move them in a dynamic manner in this transition period. And we should be able to connect them with reality, for instance, in cases of the population in depressed areas. And of course, there is a really useful experience within the cooperative world, and some of that experience could be exported in the real life to other urgent needs that governments have to address. For instance, when you try to solve the skills gaps in the technological transition, you need training. And of course, many cooperatives in their legal regime have been investing in training. So there are pieces of the cooperative legal regime that could also serve to address current concerns elsewhere. Oh, no me deja pasar. Another issue is the adequate measurement of the returns. Because nowadays we have many initiatives addressing non-financial reporting and developing accounting from this perspective. And if we consider that these improvements in non-financial reporting are used also by cooperatives, this will be the basis for developing a better tax policy in the future. So we should try to keep track and update also these tools that can have a great impact on the legal tax regime. Other possibility would be to collect more data for fairer taxation in the future, because the sector, the cooperative sector, has shown that it's very resilient to changes, to crises, and it brings value added to society. So why not think of global initiatives to fund the development of sustainable cooperatives and channel the funding all over the globe. We have here a possibility for further development. And I want to highlight that in line with Professor Hinojosa Torralbo, he has pointed out this risk that I wanted to mention now, the risk of dilution of the cooperative regime within broader social economy regime. And here it would be necessary to clarify the applicable requirements, because many times when we review the existing framework, we see that registration, accreditation, the classification of cooperatives with different protection levels, it's a nightmare and does not correspond to common lines of interpretation in many different places. The same is true for the number of members, the transaction with non-members, and all these are clues that then the fiscal legislature takes into account to design the tax regime. So it would be necessary to work hand in hand from a substantive and a fiscal perspective to ensure greater certainty and clarity for the stakeholders, because many times there are disproportionate obligations and they should be somehow revisited and changed by using digital tools that allow to take solutions in real time, and that would be an option. And I don't know. My last messages are also regarding the survival of some cooperatives that could be in a pre-liquidation phase. Oh, here it is a typo, sorry. And also look for temporary solutions for individuals that may need some sort of relief. And this after the COVID-19 pandemic would be also an urgent need to address. Last but not least, there are many specialized agencies that work on these topics, and they should have a more fluent dialogue with stakeholders in line with the SDG 17 that is pointing out the importance of partnerships to reach the goals. And one personal proposal would be to try to build a fiscal barometer to identify bottlenecks, because this could allow us to look for a minimum common denominator and from there start working to build this international minimum common regime. And of course, we've experienced the first wave of COVID that has had a horrible impact on employment, but now we will have to face the second wave, and here maybe the credit unions will play a decisive role. So financial aspects would be also in our agenda. And as much as we can show accountability from the cooperative sector, then we will be receiving public support to analyze and improve the existing legal framework. So that would be my broad lines in my contribution, and thank you very much for your interest and work in this area of law.
Professor Amparo Grau, many thanks for giving us this opportunity to see a summary of your work and the comparison regarding the taxation on cooperatives in different countries. I do have many questions, but I will hold them for the end. And thank you for also highlighting the issue of sustainable development goals and bringing that to our general discussion on cooperatives and taxation, as this is not a relevant issue. Moving now with the program. It is the time where we have the pleasure of welcoming Ian Snaith, whom we had the pleasure of interviewing for the fourth issue of our journal. For each issue, we try to find, to identify legal experts on cooperative law with a lot of experience, and with that way we can they can share their experience, their ideas, and their opinions. Ian, are you with us?
I am, Virginia. Thank you. Yes.
Great. Although the interview is not specific on the taxation, we can perhaps, if you like, have a short comment from your part on the issue on taxation and cooperatives, maybe from your experience in the UK, or we can move forward on more general questions. It depends on your preference.
Well, my remarks on taxation would be extremely brief. It's a subject about which I have very limited knowledge. However, I thought I might make a few remarks which I think are relevant to the question of taxation to cooperatives, although not directly on the question of how the tax system works. I shall just keep my remarks very brief, though, and try to keep them on the substance of law rather than the biographical information that is also in there. So, just a few points I wanted to make. I haven't actually done any overheads or anything. I mean, the first key point I think I should make is that in the UK, there is no requirement for cooperatives to use a particular legal form. And I think that is a contrast with many other jurisdictions where if you want to be a cooperative, you have to register as a cooperative society. Well, in the UK, there is a model cooperative society, and one can register as a cooperative society, but one could equally, and many do, register as a company. Now, that is fundamentally the kind of model that we're looking at for investor-controlled companies, but it doesn't have to be investor-controlled, because in both companies and in cooperative societies, a very large amount of discretion is left to those who draft the bylaws. You can have a company which is in fact not controlled by investors, although the model is typically investor control. And similarly, cooperatives are very flexible. So a wide range of legal forms, which clearly means it's more difficult to provide tax advantages, because if you don't have a very clear legal form that has to be used, it's quite hard to identify and define those entities which should have some tax advantage on the grounds of being cooperatives. The other point which I've touched on there is that both companies and cooperatives have great flexibility. So I think this is due, as our colleague Hagen has said, to the emphasis in the UK on contract as a basis of organization. And that does apply to many different legal formats. So although there are separate formats for different types of organization, the fundamental is that it's essentially a contractual relationship. And that does influence the way these organizations work. In terms of tax concessions or tax benefits, I suppose you would say, I'm aware of two, and my awareness of them is, as I said, rather limited. One form of tax benefit that is accepted by the tax authorities, regardless of legal form. It doesn't matter whether you register as a cooperative society or indeed as a company, or it doesn't matter what type of either of those it is. And that is what is seen by the tax authorities a fully mutual arrangement. So that, for example, would be a consumer cooperative that refuses to deal or trade with anyone who is not a member of the cooperative. Now, in the UK, that has never been the practice of consumer cooperatives. They have always been willing to sell to anyone, while, of course, members are the only ones who get the patronage refund or dividend, as they confusingly call it. The idea of fully mutual trading is very limited because the organization has to commit itself to never trading with anyone other than its own members. So, for example, a consumer cooperative would have to sell only to its own members. A worker cooperative would have to only use the services of its own employee members. It couldn't use other labor in any circumstances. If an organization does, however, meet those requirements, and this is quite telling about the way English law works, the theory of fully mutual trading and the benefit you get is you don't pay any corporation tax, whatever kind of entity it is. The theory for that is that all the property, all the profits, everything inside that fully mutual entity belongs already to the members. So they are not actually gaining from any transaction with anyone else. So everything is taxed in the hands of the individual members and not at all within the organization. But the tax authorities test that purely on the contractual arrangements that the organization has, and they are not concerned about the legal form, whether it be a company or a cooperative society and so on. So that is an important tax benefit, but very limited because not many organizations would meet the requirements. The other tax benefit is the concept, which I think is familiar in many jurisdictions, which is that the patronage refund, whether that be consumer cooperative members who get some refund on the basis of what they've purchased from the cooperative, or indeed whether it be a marketing cooperative, as we would call it, whereby small agricultural producers who are the members gain a refund based on how much the cooperative bought from them rather than how much they bought from it, or employee cooperatives, worker cooperatives, where the employees get some form of refund or percentage on the basis of how much work they have effectively sold to their own cooperative. All of those are accepted as being deducted from the turnover before net profits are calculated. So the taxation of net profits does not tax anything that was distributed to the members. So that is a very great benefit. And is one that exists without being fully mutual. So fully mutual, you exclude altogether. But even if you're not fully mutual, you can deduct the patronage refunds from the gross profit before you estimate the net profit or the actual amount subject to tax. Two final remarks on this before I finish. First of all, there are legal protections for the use of the word cooperative in the name of a business. So if a business of whatever type, whether it be individuals to contractually making a partnership, or whether it be registered as a company or a society or in any other way, if it wants to use the word cooperative, it has to be established that it does meet the International Cooperative Alliance Statement of Identity. And if it's found not to, then it'll be told that it cannot have the word cooperative as part of its business name. It's not allowed to do that. So that is some protection for the concept of cooperative. And that applies again across all legal forms. It doesn't matter what the type of legal form is. And the other point to finally make to reinforce this is just to say that the federal of British cooperatives, Cooperatives UK, which is the federal of all cooperative societies in whatever form they are, who choose to join it, that is, they have model constitutions, as we would say, or bylaws, as I guess would be a commoner expression in continental Europe. They have models for a company, for a partnership, for a cooperative society, or for any other form. Some of them are merely contractual arrangements. And they offer those to anyone who wishes to set up a cooperative. So that is a kind of endorsement by the movement, really, of this range of structures. So to summarize, my own view is that there are benefits from not having a single cooperative code or law, which all cooperatives are required to use. But a cost of it, if you like, is that it's more difficult to get tax concessions. So those are my few remarks, and I'd be happy to deal with any questions anyone has. So thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you in particular for interviewing me, which was very flattering. Never happened to me before that. So thank you very much, and I much appreciate all the work that everyone has done for this issue. Thank you very much.
Hold on, Ian. We do have a lot of questions. No, not a lot, but just a few. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the taxation. And if I may now move forward to more personal questions that we have asked during our interview. You have a lot of experience in teaching and research on cooperative law and lawmaking when it comes to cooperatives, but it's rather rare for a lawyer, for a practitioner, for a researcher to do work and to establish an interest, to develop an interest in the field of cooperative law. So may I kindly ask you to share with us whether there has been a mentor or what was the initial, let's say, sparkle there that you have developed an interest in this exotic field?
Thank you, yes. You might say that my first interest in it was typically opportunistic in an Anglo-Saxon way. I was at the university, I hadn't published a book. I thought, well, what is there that I could write about? Oh yeah, cooperatives. No one has written what would be regarded as in the UK system, I suppose, as a full legal text on that subject. And I thought, oh, well, there we are. That's what I'll do. So it was, in that sense, classically opportunistic and so on. But of course, then in the process of doing that, I read quite extensively on the nature of cooperatives and the history and some of the other disciplinary areas such as sociology and so on, and became extremely interested. And there was some family connection. My mother's family were quite involved with the consumer cooperative movement, so it wasn't entirely unknown territory. But that was how I came to get involved in it, if I'm frank. What then happened was, because I was the only person who had done this kind of work in the British system, I then got invited to join European colleagues in other projects, and thereby met Hans Munkner, of course, who the classic leading figure, who was very influential on me, because I had great sympathy with his position that cooperatives should be very separate from government and are part of a market system. And of course, I then, at a slightly later stage, through involvement in, I think it was in Poland, we were talking about cooperative law and how it could be consistent with, EU, Western European views. And that was where I met Hagen, of course, and I've known him ever since. So Hagen and Hans Munkner, I would say, were the two main inspirations for me.
Okay, great. And now I would like to highlight something that you have said, because it's quite at the heart of the discussions that we have at IUS Cooperative, and also we share it with other colleagues as well. As you have witnessed yourself, and many of us that we are here today as students, as researchers, as teachers, professors, it seems that still cooperatives are not part of the main curricula of law schools, of academia overall, of our bachelor degrees, of our master degrees. And how would you recommend us to tackle that? How do you think, what kind of solution is there? Because apart from being a footnote, we need to shed some light on cooperatives. It's rather disproportionate to their importance, especially in the times that we are living. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think one has to simply put pressure on those responsible for these things as far as possible. And clearly, the more successful and the cooperative movement in its various parts is, and the more it expands, then the more likely it is that it will be given more attention. I can't really think of anything else one can do. I mean, I suppose legislation helps, not in the sense of legislating for what universities should do, but in the sense that the more clear it is that there is cooperative legislation, the easier it is to justify a special, part on the syllabus. But this was a problem throughout my time. No one ever really talked about cooperatives. And I was always rather coy about it, as you might say, because I taught company law mostly. And I did feel it would be rather self-indulgent for me to give too high a proportion of that course to cooperatives. And by and large, over the years, students were not terribly keen to deal with that, because they had chosen company law because they wanted to make money, and they were not really interested in concepts of social benefit or cooperatives. So it's difficult to know what you do. And I think to some extent, it depends on the greater success of cooperatives in the economy and in society. And I suppose people understanding they are an answer, they are a solution to many of the problems. And the control that consumers or workers, the stakeholder group has, is really the very important point. And that's what distinguishes them from social economy and public benefit and so on, which are all fine, but they're not cooperatives, because cooperatives, I mean, I've shocked many people over the years by saying cooperatives are about the interests of their members. And that is a group, and that is their purpose. It is not the public interest. It is the interests of members. And, you know, obviously particular cooperatives might have other objectives as well, but people, you know, that is a key element, I think, in cooperatives. And I think both Munkta and Hagen Henry would probably accept that. So I don't know how helpful that is.
No, it is. Thank you, Ian, for sharing your thoughts on taxation. Thank you also for sharing your thoughts and your experience in the field of cooperative law. Now we can move forward with the discussion. If there are any questions, any comments to the presenting authors, to the participants, please feel free to take the floor.
I would like to say something. I would like to thank Professor Snaith because the presentation has been so clarifying and so didactic. I have understood so much, and I would like to ask him if he thinks he can elaborate more about the advantages of forming a cooperative against another form or corporation, no? In tax matter, I mean.
Ian, would you like to address the question?
Yes, certainly. In terms of taxation, I suppose only that maybe you get the point I made about the patronage refund effectively is one benefit, which is more clearly available if you use the cooperative society structure and would not be available if you used a company structure, for example. So that is a very clear benefit of using the structure. In terms of just being a cooperative and operating like a cooperative, I'm not sure I'm clear what and clearly the mutual trading idea, if you only ever deal with your members, if you can have a situation where tax law will take the view that the property is simply the shared property of the members and not owned by anyone else, in which case it will be, I think the expression is tax transparent. They will ignore, you know, the fully mutual thing.
I suppose the main benefit it would be that all taxation is in one of the parts, only in the member, not in the cooperative. It's different from the other corporation that they are taxed by the corporation is taxed, and also the members when they get the dividend. No, that would be, yes. It's my opinion too. That is not the case in Spain, you know. But I think is very common in that issue, and I think it's the main also because it's addressed to the structure of the cooperative. It's just a technicality, really. It's not a benefit property, no?
Yeah. One might also mention variable share capital as a significant feature of cooperative societies rather than companies. In the UK, certainly, a company can only buy back its own shares after very substantial hurdles are crossed and so on, procedures, which again I think is not out of line with the EU directives, because that was where we borrowed it from. A cooperative, on the other hand, can have withdrawable shares, which can easily be bought back from the members. So that is a significant difference, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pilar, and thank you, Ian. Are there any questions, any comments?
If I may,
yes.
I would like to react to your point on how we could introduce cooperatives in the university curriculums. And I think that, at least in my university, I see that there has been a growing concern regarding what can we do to support SDGs with the 2030 agenda. So as far as we can show and prove with results that this sector is serving to those goals, we could also try to offer courses in that area. And it's being promoted by the universities to offer special courses on how to better achieve these goals. So as long as you can prove this serves, it could be admitted, I believe. I haven't tried yet, but I could try. Thank you.
I think it's an excellent point, Professor Amparo Grau, to make the liaison with broader concepts such as the Sustainable Development Goals. No, I think it's a great idea. If there are any other questions, if I may pose one to Professor Amparo Grau, sorry. I have noted down an idea of yours on fiscal barometer. So I was wondering, since we have 2 minutes more, if you could please further elaborate what do you think this barometer could actually do, and what would be its impact? Thank you.
Well, you know, nowadays many governments are driving the decision-making processes from objective data. What you need also is to know what's the experience with the application of the law in the different sectors. So I'm now conducting a research for the Institute of Fiscal Studies here in Spain, the Ministry of Finance, on the usefulness of fiscal barometers everywhere. And I've been researching on comparative experiences and how they serve for fiscal reform. So maybe I think this could be an area where a pilot project could be presented and try to get an insight from the experts in this field to better accommodate future regulation. And of course, there are limitations in these techniques, and I am observing that there are many years the Institute for Fiscal Studies has been researching only on very specific topics, and depending on the priorities on the policy agenda, they pay attention to one or another need. And I think if we could place this in the ministries in every country, our aims, that would be a step forward, or at least independently try to provide results that could be taken into consideration for further reform.
Okay, thank you for your question. There are no other questions from our participants or from the audio. Then we can move forward with the program. David, would you like to make the conclusions of today?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Iphigenia. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone, the presenters and also the attenders, and especially, of course, all the persons who made possible the publication of that fourth issue. So I would say 2 or 3 persons, mainly Pilar and probably Andrea, but I'm not aware of the distribution of work between the 2 of them. And clearly Iphigenia, because I know I know very clearly what has been her engagement. And as said Iphigenia, thank you, of course, to all the proofreaders and peer reviewers who made a very great job. And it's always a surprise that we managed to have the publication. But this being said, I think that it's natural to have a few words about the topic itself. I will not repeat what has been said. I just would like to highlight first the importance of the topic of taxation. We know that taxation is a very hot topic, and it has always, since the beginning of cooperative law, it was an occasion of quarrel between cooperators and merchants, or let's say capitalists. So it has always been a very tricky question, and it remains clearly so important. And what maybe is a bit new is that I think that for a long time taxation has been considered like, let's say, political lobbying, and the tax treatment, positive tax treatment for cooperatives was considered like a political support. And now, I don't say that it is not true anymore, but it has become far clearer that it could only rely on a very identifiable identity for cooperative. And it's not a hazard if ICA focuses again on cooperative principles or cooperative identity. That is the only possible basis on which can be built spatial legal regime, and notably about taxation. So that is the first point. And the second point is that, and it has been said by several people, several presenters, cooperative law, and this is true as well for cooperative taxation, cannot be anymore self, or not self, but let's say isolated. Cooperatives will never become the majority of business of legal forms of enterprises around the world. This will not happen. And in the meantime, we all agree, I think, that the capitalist system as it works cannot be kept as it is because of social crisis, environmental crisis, political crisis. And so there is a growing agreement that the things have to move. What is the place, what is the room for cooperatives in that new world, if we admit in the meantime that cooperatives will never be the majority of enterprises? To me, cooperatives are, and it's probably the most important, far more important than being the majority of enterprises. Cooperatives have to be a model, let's say a template nearly. They are a model because they propose another way to make business, to run business, and beside cooperatives can grow many kinds of enterprises, and also can be gathered all existing enterprises which are not really capitalistic. Let's think of small or medium enterprises with their local territorial engagement. which are not really capitalists. And so these non-profitability or limited profitability of cooperatives can become a model, and I've been very sensitive to a proposal that would be that maybe it's not to give a special positive tax treatment to cooperatives, but to consider negative tax treatment for true capitalist businesses because of the negative impacts that they can have for the world, for environment, and so on. So cooperatives cannot remain alone. They have to discuss and make arrangements with other kinds of enterprises. And exactly in parallel, cooperative law must absolutely gain into the academic debate about other questions than cooperative law itself. And that's our hope that such an issue, such a journal, can be the opportunity to, first of all, deepen knowledge and thinking about cooperative law, but also to disseminate cooperative thinking into the law academy, and to stimulate debates between cooperative lawyers and other lawyers, because cooperative law is able to have or to inspire, to make inspiration in many debates, many academic debates. So we are very happy for that issue. We are now preparing the next issue, and not for the next issue because it will be a general one, but probably for the fifth issue we will have to choose a new topic after cooperative taxation. For the time being, thank you very much. Have a nice day, and see you in a next webinar organized by Youth Cooperative. Goodbye.